Hey, welcome everybody. So we're all about hardware startups, and I find a bit ironically that often with hardware startups, the thing that gets the most overlooked is the real hardware part, which is the manufacturing, and it's typically very difficult. There's a lot of details that startup founders don't often have much experience with, and can be very undervalued and lead to a lot of challenges really getting to that next level. So we've got some great panelists with us that are really experienced in this particular field, of taking the startup folks to manufacturing. And we're going to focus today on getting to scale, which I think we've all in earlier discussion talked about actually needs to, a lot of that focus needs to be on the earlier stage and getting it really set up to ramp quickly. So without further ado, we'll do some brief introductions. We've got a lot to talk about, so we're going to get straight down to it. But we have Eric Chan, who is founder and CEO of Echo Designs, and we have Eric here in particular to discuss this earlier part. A lot of startups are in this stage of building that design, and so we're going to talk a little bit about what does it really take at that early level to prepare those designs. Bob Brakeman, who a lot of you folks here in the area probably already know, a leader from Jabil and previously PCH in small business development, coming with over a decade experience of working with the big guys here and overseas to help the startups get to market and really focus on the operations. And Jackie Dansak, who's founded Amphibian in your 7th, 8th year now, and working with products like the Nike's Fuel Band, the Disney's Magic Band, current products Spire, the Tangible Osmo, and the Motive Ring. So a lot of experience also. And previously coming from the other side of marketing distribution, and so seeing how it all comes together. So we've got really a full list of expertise on stage today. So I'm going to start with kind of the general state of the market. You guys have been seeing things at its core where it's been happening for the last few years, and there's been certainly a lot of changes, I think, in focus. And I just want to throw out kind of a general question. Where do you see manufacturing for hardware startups now? How has it changed recently? And any general advice you have from the manufacturing perspective? And let me start with you, Eric.
Yes, traditional product like appliance and refrigerator and microwave to everyday object is actually a plateau. And I think all this interesting opportunity about manufacturing, not in terms of how to make the same thing a lot more the same kind. So the reason for all this startup interest is because a lot of different ideas, they're actually bombarding all this industrial base. So small, agile, really fast, and because of the whole complex of from design to manufacturing is so easy. And anybody can make a product very fast and scale up very fast. But there's a lot of illusion about how to make a few dozen of them to making a few thousand of them. And then from few thousand to millions of them. And a lot of people still coming up to us to say, I have a Kickstarter. Can I ship the 3D print model to the consumer? And they don't even talk to manufacturer at that level. So this is very unfortunate. There's an illusion about it. So there's a lot of professionals trying to help you as a startup to really thinking about what is going to happen. Especially a lot of hardware become a lot more intelligent, from sensor, from camera, from antenna, from all these things. So we a lot more complicated. So you need expert to help you along the way. That's one thing.
Sorry, I forgot to mention too, if you guys want to add some more color on your work too, and General Dirk, do you want to talk about some of the interesting designs you worked on?
Well, I mean, the particular design object?
Yeah.
I think right now we're doing a lot of like interactive IoT of thing and wearable computing, and also the applying to like earbud. And how can a earbud as small as this and become intelligent? Not just giving sound, but now they go to AI. And then need to talk about when you speak something, can you capture it and translating it? So all those things will become a little small device. And then we also help a lot of companies like LG and Samsung of the world to think about what is an appliance could be making it smaller and smarter. And the early panel people talk about, this is a lot of machine, real estate in our real world, and there's a lot of cloud. And design is actually becoming a lot intelligent. How to find all the opportunity to using all technology to compact in a very small package, a more intelligent package. And you can still sell the data and the hardware at the same time. So manufacturing become not only the hardware anymore. So the software, the firmware, and the whole intelligent thing will really become challenging for designer. I think the last simulating tool, the first session people talk about, the simulation is very, very helpful for a lot of startup.
Yeah, one of my favorite designs of yours is they figured out a way to put speakers back to back to cancel out the noise effect, so you really got a pure sound.
Yeah, we can simulate a lot of sound effect and make the signs to deliver better quality and more experience. Because we really not just design for the object or science, we really design for people. How do you get value out of all the same?
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Greg. So, like Greg said, I work for a really big manufacturer called Jabil. We're about 250,000 employees, 100 factories in 30 some odd countries. And I think we're the third largest manufacturer on the planet. And within Jabil, I work for a smaller group called Radius Innovation. We're a product development, engineering, industrial design firm. And within that group, I run a operation called our Digital Accelerator. We work with early stage companies bringing products to market, and we help them to go through the NPI, the new product introduction process, and we help them get themselves prepared to go to mass production in one of our global factories. So we do local, small-scale, controlled manufacture, and we kind of use that as a lead-in to kind of talk a little bit about the history of manufacturing, like Greg was asking where we are. So 20 years ago, I guess I'm dating myself a little bit in that, manufacturing was more of a kind of a case of alchemy. It was kind of something that happened in big factories with specialized engineers. And in the last few years, we've seen access to mass production capabilities really expand. It's a whole lot easier for someone to develop a product and go to China and find factories that will work directly with them and put together teams or find service organizations like Amphibian that will help you get to manufacturing. But as these access to manufacturing capabilities has expanded, I think that in a lot of cases companies have started to let go of or miss a lot of the fundamentals that allow them to operate long-term as a company, especially when it comes to planning your product development, planning your manufacturing, and planning your ability to scale. These things that you want to have in place as you're developing your product, and you're not leaving till the end when you're thinking, well, we'll build a prototype and then we'll worry about manufacturing it and scale once we prove that it works. So what we focus on is working with companies to make sure they don't make those mistakes early on, and you get to the market, and everybody that's in the hardware world knows that your window of opportunity with a hardware device is getting smaller and smaller. So we work with companies to try to get them into manufacturing in a way that's going to really allow them to be efficient and scale very fluidly. Make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And so far, so good. It's a lot of fun working with small companies and seeing them become big companies and helping them scale to global markets.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob. Segue to what we do. So Amphibian is, Greg said, has been around for about 8 years now. I'm actually probably the youngest and least experienced person on my team, and I've been in hardware since 1998 with a background in digital projection. As Greg said, I started on the front end of the business, so I was doing sales, marketing, branding, channel distribution in Asia, the United States, and Europe. the rest of my team has a minimum of 20 to 40 years in manufacturing, either in China, Norway, Malaysia, here in the United States, and Mexico. Just a really fantastic group of people, and I try and explain what we do in kind of a sense of the mistakes that Bob mentioned earlier. I think a lot of people do what we do, but we have over a century of mistakes that we have seen get made over and over again. So I think our value add is to help step in and help our clients understand, whether it be a Nike or a Disney or someone at a smaller scale that's maybe only going to market with 1,000 or 3,000 units for their Kickstarter campaign, the mistakes are the same. Whether it be a cell phone or a missile control system, the mistakes are there, and our team has a broad range of experience in all of those different technologies, from something very simple from an overmolded device to something very complex like a hydrogen fuel cell or a missile control system. We're able to step in really quickly and see where those potential mistakes are going to be made or to be had, and can step in and really kind of hedge your bets in the manufacturing environment against kind of going down a rat hole and learning the hard way. So I think our skill set is really kind of to shield our clients and our partners from those tragedies, because they will happen. As far as manufacturing trends or how we see the industry right now, I think for us, we're really agnostic, I think, to I was talking to someone earlier and they said, well, it seems like you're only in China, and, don't you see stuff moving back to the United States with the current climate? And for us, I think our role is not necessarily to push anyone in one direction on where to manufacture. We will float RFQs in the United States, Mexico, Europe, China. Our role is to give our partners and clients an opportunity to see all the line items in that bill of materials, see how labor is going to affect your costing in one area versus another, see how moving components around China, to your site versus moving them from China to a U.S. site is going to affect your costing. What we try and do is help everyone make informed decisions on where they're going to produce and the outcome in that. I still see a lot of the same trends, though, from 5 or 6 years ago, where there's just not enough foresight that goes into the process when it comes to things like, and I know you're going to talk about it later, things like quality plans, certification, test planning, understanding MOQs and MOUs and SOWs and all that fun stuff. So, I mean, we're here to help, but we'd like to help educate more on that front end. So I know you're going to touch on that.
Yeah, well, I think this is a great segue. I always love getting in the room with other manufacturers, especially when they manufacture for startups, because we all sit around and just nod our heads furiously, like, oh boy, that problem again. I saw that last week. And so to that point, what are the common problems, right? What are the common problems you see, as you get into it? What are the things that startups can really, you immediately would say you should focus on to improve? Like, maybe Bob, you want to take that one?
Okay, so there are certain aspects of product manufacturing that everybody leaves to the last minute, and it always ends up being really problematic and costing you time and usually a lot of money. Testing, product functionality testing for manufacturing, quality testing, packaging. Start planning your packaging when you start planning your product, and scaling. And everyone focuses on building a product that is beautiful, and that they're very happy with themselves, but they're not thinking about, can this actually be made 50, 100,000, 50,000, 100,000 a month, and the time to start thinking about the scaling is when you're designing your product. So you may be working with a really cool chipset that you're coding to, but if you have to order 50,000 at a time and it's a 2-year lead time, you might want to think about another chipset. You might find a really good deal working with a plastics manufacturer in Shenzhen, but if that plastic manufacturer's capacity caps out at 5,000 units a month, and you suddenly have to scale to 10,000, and you have to start over, and you're paying expedites for tooling, it's going to become a very problematic issue. So the sooner that you start thinking about these issues, the better off you're going to be. Design for manufacture, set up your supply chain for your anticipated scale, know your suppliers, and build out your scalability models before you need to scale. If you have to start thinking about time and cost of scalability, when you need to scale your manufacturing, you're already behind the 8 ball. Know what your working capital requirements are going to be way ahead of time. Know what your credit limits are with your suppliers. Even know what your logistics, units that can be shipped today. It's really a drag to manufacture 100,000 units in a month for customer orders, but have a logistics center that can only ship 20,000 a month. And also on the topic of test, know about things like your test equipment. If you spent 6 months building custom test equipment, and you have capacity to run 10,000 units across that test equipment a month, and to scale, you're going to have to go through another 6-month development process. Know these things in advance and plan on that. So when you get that giant order from the big box retail chain and they want it in 6 weeks, you can tell them what's realistic and what it's going to cost, and you go to your investors and tell them how much they need to kick in, and have that all planned out. As it'll save you a lot of headaches long term.
I think, one of the key points I think you kind of keep referring to is that manufacturing is slow and expensive and takes a lot of planning. And it's very different than what startups kind of need to do, which is agile and fast and meet the market. So it's really about a lot of planning and trying to think of all these details, think through your whole BOM, and that's what really makes hardware startups pretty tough.
I have one anecdotal thing about packaging, and it's not just a startup problem. I was working with a Fortune 50 company, and they had a certain fancy band that they wanted to put out, and they kept pushing for a sub $5 bill of materials on it. But when that band's packaging came to fruition, the packaging itself and the logistics for that particular band was somewhere between $12 to $15. So they had their eye on the bomb, but what they didn't have their eye on was what we refer to as landed cost. And a landed cost is everything that hits your bomb. It's your bomb plus everything that hits that before it lands on your clients.
What are some of the other things that you would?
So I would say logistics, distribution, warehousing, packaging, insurance.
Golden prototype. Go to show all this.
Yeah, all this. People are so focused on this bill of materials, and that's kind of everything. And packaging should be in the bill of materials, but most of the bill of materials that I've seen from startups and even some of these larger companies do not include packaging in it. And it can be and packaging's tough because if you're planning to ship in Europe, it has to have certain environmental considerations. It has to be recyclable. It has to, even in the United States, your packaging has to be standard. If it's not standard size, you can go from maybe $6 a box, priority mail package to $13 a box if it's non-standard. So just get on the USPS site and figure out what standard packaging looks like and fit your product into it. Do not try and differentiate with something special in packaging. I've seen just nightmares. Sorry, you're triggering stuff.
God.
I'm having nightmares.
and don't solve the problems when you have outstanding orders.
Yeah,
Solve the problem before you
call me. Call Bob.
I would throw in duties as well. People are always usually tend to think about shipping, but they don't think about the duties associated, which can be huge sometimes.
Harmonization code selection.
Know your HTS code, right? You can figure out your duties pretty easily if you have a well-defined product, and even if you don't, you can do some research and figure that out.
And you can drive to San Francisco to the enforcement office, and you can get a letter from them certifying that your product complies to harmonization code with no tariffs, and you can get a lot of mileage out of that letter and that legwork ahead of time.
Absolutely. So let's go a little bit early stage. We keep talking about planning, and as a veteran designer working with the big guys and the small guys, what do you do that when you're focusing on your design? What are the things that you're thinking about when you're preparing to hand it off? And I'll throw in there too.
Yeah.
The quote process, right? What are the things you're trying to really include to get the correct quote as a part of that?
I think a lot of time, design and manufacturing, that transition period is a lot of things that you may be proof of concept, maybe working really well. Now you can make a few really marketable prototype. Simple thing could be like the CMF, how the color, material finish, and it can affecting not only the timeline, but also the price point and even the functionality. I'll give you an example. We're working on a small Bluetooth earbud, but originally it was a simple paint finish, but the client wanted to be metallic, so we coded in the metallic, but that actually changing the behavior of the antenna. So all those specs will change, the cost will change, and everything will change. So sometimes you can think it's a simple just color change, but actually affecting a long term, down the road. So all those simple things that may be affecting. So many other things like the packaging and also a lot of the protocol of how you could organize with the ergonomic, material, how many things to display on the shelf, and we also need to plan the whole user experience, how to present to the whole population about, when you go to a trade show. I mean, when we set it up, we definitely have the whole golden sample, the CAD drawing, the 2D drawing, the product requirement document is really have to be very, very thorough. And that's your golden Bible when you go to negotiate and quotation, from, what's the EMI, to the material finish, to the wiring, to the foam packaging, and all the way. And all the look and feel have to be there. I cannot go more into detail about all this electronic thing, which is the firmware and also a big issue that we need to work with as a designer. Now, many of the UI, UX interface, we need to provide the whole protocol for them. So those things need to be set to people that they can get a very firm code.
How about you guys? What do you wish startups would provide more when they're getting quotes from you?
Do you want to?
Well, we have a checklist that usually we hand to them, and it's our standard RFQ checklist. And I'd say I've never met one client that has everything on it, but I mean that it creates the RFQ package that we need to hand to any manufacturer before they'll even consider quoting for the product, or quoting for the job. But I mean, what's usually missing are 2D drawings, a CMF or color, materials, and finish spec, test plans, quality plans, because I think, and people will say, oh, well, I just had a client come to me today, and was like, oh, we're going into DVT, so we're going to need help with our quality plan and our test plan. It's like, really? Now you're thinking about this? I mean, it helps really true up the quotes with the suppliers, because if once they understand the level of quality that you want them to build to, once they understand that this is going to have to be a mirror-like hand-polished finish versus something that is, just kind of popped out of the mold and, assembled, it's a very different process for them. It's much more of a hands-on process. QC is much more labor-intensive. They're going to have different types of skill set on the line, different types of test equipment. All of that they need to know up front, and you need to be able to tell them up front so that you're getting an accurate quote. Because what's going to happen is they're either going to build the assumptions in and build ambiguity in, and ambiguity in manufacturing equals cost. That's the end of the day. So the more you can drive out ambiguity and the more that you can tell your manufacturer that you know exactly what you want it to look like, and you know exactly how it's supposed to perform, not just at sea level, but at 10,000 miles up in 80-degree humidity and in dust. If you can really define that with your team and your design company, your manufacturer is going to have a really easy time or an easier time quoting an accurate cost to you. But again, ambiguity equals cost. So get it out of the way as fast as you can.
Mm-hmm. So from the perspective of a manufacturer, a complete RFQ package with a scrubbed BOM, complete document set, 2D, 3D drawings, Gerbers, schematics, with a complete package, it takes me about 2 weeks and costs about $2,000 for me to quote a manufacturing project. And we can put together an accurate quote that we can honor to mass production. A half-done quote package takes about 5 weeks to quote, because we'll have to go back and forth, we'll have to make allowances for ambiguity, we'll have to document our proposal for areas to be determined. It can cost about $50,000 to respond to that quote. So just the cost of responding to a quote that's not well put together makes it impossible for us to work with a lot of early stage companies. We say, look, this isn't a proven product, and we just can't afford to spend $50,000 on the chance to launch a product that may never go anywhere. So my favorite way of engaging with an early stage company is if they're working with a company like Amphibian. Go to a company that knows how to put together your RFQ package to make sure all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and give it to us as a polished, ready-to-go package. It's going to get you much more accurate quote, like Jackie was saying. Ambiguity is cost, because we have a couple of directions we can go. We can either estimate low and then nickel and dime you at every step along the way, and you didn't define this, we're defining it now, and this is the cost. Or we can estimate high, and then we're not going to be competitive, and you'll end up going with a manufacturer that's then going to nickel and dime you because they're working with the same ambiguous information that we had, and we're just taking two different approaches on the quoting, and that's not doing anybody a service, especially whoever is trying to bring the product to market. So really focus on making sure you have a complete package that is ready to quote before you start working with CMs. And what the $15,000, $20,000 you spend with a good consultant to put that package together is worth 10x that in return in what it will save you long term.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like you bringing that up, because in the manufacturer's position, we're kind of stuck, right? Exactly. To go to manufacturing, you have to have this information. There's no other way to set up the machines and the assembly line and the quality control. You just have to, at the end of the day, have it. And so but at the same time, we don't have time to educate, right? We can't spend our whole jobs working with those customers and teaching them all the things they don't have. So really learning about the RFQ, that package, how do you get down to those details, tolerances, right? And just everything has to have a tolerance, right?
Red plastic is not a specification. Right?
It has to be nice. It has to work good.
It has to be shiny.
It has to be perfect.
Pantone color, is this ABS? What is the thickness? What is the final texture? Is it okay to use a paint, or does it have to be
metallic?
What's the finish?
Polish, mold, and sandblast to polish. A big difference.
And there's a huge variance, and it's the difference between having a product that you're proud to put out and a product that falls apart.
And then the risk of the defects, quality.
Just to add to the point that a lot of startup, when they do it from like rapid prototype, proof it, and then they normally go for a soft tooling, make aluminum tooling to make a few thousand or few hundred to test the market. From there, you may be better version to save money and really try to get the product market fit. You still can make change, right? But when you go to high steel, high volume tooling, it's a very different story. So that's what we're talking about, you know. So if you think of a soft tooling, rubber tooling, that's really different story when you really step up. And that is really the jumping off point. So a lot of startup may be mistaken, you know, I can make a few thousand, it should be not a problem. But that is a big problem when you really make a high scale, you know, high production, like what Bob's saying.
Let's keep going on the kind of the quality area, and you know, I find this even with a lot of experience, there's still a little bit of gray area as far as whose job is it to fully define. You know, the factory has to, at the end of the day, implement Six Sigma or total quality management or these much more complex systems that a startup certainly can't be expected to provide. The startup has to provide the details of what needs to get made. So how do you guys, what insights do you have as far as where do you draw that line? What do you expect? How do you work to fill out all those details?
Okay, so
This is where you and I get adversarial.
no. So I'm going to take a step back. Before I joined Jabil, and actually the reason I ended up joining Jabil is I had a company before it was absorbed into Jabil called Fuel Partners. And we worked as consultants. One of the things we did is we provided quality control engineers, third-party engineers into factories to monitor quality processes. So kind of a confessions of a scale manufacturer. The manufacturer, every product that comes down the assembly line, they want that product to pass quality control and to go into a good bin. Because if it doesn't go into the good bin, it costs the factory money. But you only want those products that are built to your specification, to the user experience level that you want your customers to have to go into that good bin. And you want everything that doesn't to be scrapped, and you want the factory to cover the cost and do a better job of manufacturing. And the ownership of that process has to be the product company, you all. You don't really ever want to lose control of that process. Is that?
That is fair.
Okay, is that fair? So I made a living doing that until Jabil said, why don't you just come and work for us? And, you know, controlling your quality control is, you know, very much akin to the same reason that in the U.S. we subsidize farmers, because in a natural market, all of our agricultural production would end up in South America because it's cheaper. The cost of land is cheaper, but we never want to lose the ability to feed ourselves. Losing control of your own quality control processes is like giving away your company, losing control of your product. And you don't ever want to do that. So inevitably, you will have to own that process, like it or not. You can't outsource that, or if you do, it's to your own peril.
Well, I think, as Greg was saying, there are QMS, there's the quality management systems, and there are systems in place to manage quality in most reputable CMs, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the definition of quality must come from the product owner. It must come from you as the startup, the designer, the founder. You define quality. And that you can never, as Bob was saying, you can never let that go. Quality, and I liken it to, it's a philosophical concept. What is truth? What is beauty? What is quality, right? I mean, it differs from where you're sitting to where I'm sitting, from here to Mexico to China. I was joking around with someone the other day about, you know, how prescriptive you have to get. And it's like asking your partner in China to set you up on a date with someone, and they don't know, you know, they just know you like women. I mean, you will probably get a woman on that date, but whether she's, you know, to your visible liking, I mean, if she's pleasing to you or not, you know, that may or may not be the case. And that might be a horrible analogy, but it is that. I mean, we've had situations where we've taken the quality plan from our clients and just handed it over, and it's not, we've tried to make them or tried to get them to let us help them write a very prescriptive quality plan. But for them, it was, well, it's obvious. Why do we have to spend time with this? Don't they know? Wouldn't they know? And it's, no, they don't know. They don't know. And it's not just because they're Chinese or Mexican or from Nevada. It's just different. It has to be very, very, very prescriptive. Because what's good for me may not be good for you. And that's just a universal truth.
I think, you know, when you look at how quality is defined, right, as a system, it's, and a really important word is it's acceptable or it's a defect, right? It's not high quality or low quality. It's not beautiful or ugly. It's either acceptable or it's not acceptable. And how that's defined is by the tolerances, right? And by all of these tools that we have to communicate. And so we often get stuck in the same situation. It needs to be beautiful or it needs to be perfect or something, and that is meaningless, right? There's that perfection is infinitely expensive. So if you have an infinite amount of money, you can, well, even then there's laws of physics, obviously, but so it's understanding quality as acceptable, I think, is a really important aspect of that. Let's talk about communication. You know, I find this really an overlooked, you know, all the stuff that we're talking about has to be communicated, right? And if you're communicating overseas or even in the same language, but with technical expertise that you are not familiar with, what are some tips that you guys would give, Eric, you know, when you work with manufacturers?
Well, I mean, definitely it's a lot of virtual tool, you know, I need documentation, full, all this, you know, project management tool, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of them. Nothing can replacing conversation, even though different conversation, different language, you know, when we get into passing from design, mixture of quality, define, you know, beautiful or polished and whatever, nothing you can talk about by showing real sample and actual people-to-people conversation. Even virtual is better than, you know, nothing, but face-to-face have to be there too. So we actually do many midnight call, you know, every other day or, you know, once a week is very common, you know. So, and we may need to go check milestone if we need to see real sample, talk to the people that actually on site making the real change of, you know, from software. You need to listen to the sound quality. You know, you cannot tell you what's a good enough quality. So things like that need to be physically there. You need to be there to see it, to feel it, to define. Especially when you're the owner of the project, when you are the entrepreneur, you really need to know enough by heart what that means to you. So a lot of time, physical conversation is not replaceable.
I agree. Face-to-face, don't think you can manage a program or be a partner with someone, you know, 10,000 miles away without meeting them. If you are doing business in China, showing face, giving face, you know, showing that you're concerned and involved and have your heart in it, there's nothing more valuable than that, and it goes a long way. Meet the directors, meet the teams. People are a lot more willing to try and understand what you're saying if they have met you and they see that you're earnest. Take pictures, do video conferences, but again, don't just be very prescriptive. Don't leave anything to chance.
Yeah, the only point that I would add is just assume nothing. There is no detail that is not worth discussing, bringing up, clarifying. Just never assume that your manufacturer will just automatically do something or will have someone doing something. Discuss everything, verify everything, touch on every detail, no matter how small.
Trust but verify.
I will give a sideline note to that. So one of my first times in China, I was having dinner with my partners, and they didn't speak very good Chinese, and they asked me, "Do you want pig head?" And I'm thinking, I'm adventurous, I'll eat anything. So it was hot pot, where you cook your own food with pig brains, raw pig brains, sat right next to my plate. Don't assume anything. You don't know what you're going to get, especially in a different culture, in a different language, and with very technical things, it gets even more challenging. So, we're going to encourage some questions. So we'll have time for a couple questions here at the end after we follow up with these questions. If you would have any questions for the panel, please come up and be ready by the mic. We'll call on you in just a couple minutes. And in the meantime, I want to go into this concept of manufacturing contracts. Come in all shapes and sizes, and people use them much differently. And I found it very challenging as a startup. You don't have a lawyer on your team. You don't have $10,000 or $100,000 to get into all the details up front. But you need to protect yourself. You need to get into these details. What do you guys like? What do you recommend as far as trying to, sign that contract with your manufacturer?
Well, we're actually doing a lot of that right now, and it's companies that have went off and found their own suppliers without us, but have come back and said, they've presented us with their contract, and we don't know what to look for. And I think just based on our experience, because of, Brian's from Sony, I'm from InFocus, we've worked with Foxconn, I've got, tier 1 contracts from, with Celestica and Flex, and, so we've got a lot of templates that actually work in the client's favor to a point. But I mean, any contract that a CM gives you is most likely going to be working in your favor. And it goes back to what's really important for us is this definition of quality, to bring this full circle, and making sure that quality is clearly defined, and to what is acceptable, to what is a reject. That is where your contract is going to save you. We've seen scenarios where very large, well-funded startups have gone into situations without a contract. They were doing POs back to back, no contracts. They ended up with over $1 million worth of faulty inventory. And because what was good versus what wasn't good was not defined in the contract, the CM, and this was a tier 1, JDM, tier 1, said to the client, well, you didn't tell us what good was, so you need to eat it. And we're not going to fix it because it's not in our contract. So these guys almost went out of business, because when you have $1 million worth of faulty inventory, that means you actually have $3 million or $2 million worth of, out of pocket, because you have to replace that $1 million worth of inventory to your clients. Then you're sitting on stuff that you don't know what to do with. And then you have to figure out how to fix it. But I mean, this is very recent and very real. Do not go into any relationships without a full-blown contract. And they can be, like you said, 100 pages long, but they don't need to be. If we can just address as long as quality is addressed, frankly, everything else is negotiable, but you really have to define that. And I think if that is the one thing that you focus on in your negotiations, then everything else is kind of gravy. But that's the big one, and I can't stress that enough.
So I'd add quality, warranty.
Warranty ties in.
And material liability.
Yes, good one.
So if you are getting a great price because your manufacturer is ordering in huge volumes, but you have material liability for all sorts of potential excess and obsolete inventory, know upfront and have mechanisms in place to deal with it, because your excess and obsolete inventory could very quickly become in excess of the value of your manufacturing. Also, from a structural perspective, like Jackie was saying, there are a few things that you want to have at a top level really locked in. Quality, warranty, liability, and a few things, shipping, exchange rates, and term and termination types clauses. But the more that you can include of the project-specific terms and conditions in an appendix, the better off you're going to be. Contracts are very much reviewed. They're harder to get signed. They require a legal review, and they're harder to change. So if you can put together a very short, focused agreement and then leave as much project-specific material into appendices, which can be changed much faster with a much lower level of authority for sign-off, you're going to be in a much better position long-term when it comes to making changes, which you will have to make.
Yeah. Yeah, great points. I would throw one more in there about intellectual property. Is that it could be that the actual value of your product or company is
really good
more in the manufacturing development, and you're paying the manufacturer to often do that for you, but it can be sometimes in the contracts written in the manufacturer's favor that they own that technology and they own then the secret sauce to really doing what you're doing well. So. Do we have anybody with a question here? Or we have one more? Do you want to come up to the mic here? Sure.
So my question was about 3D printing technologies and the whole spectrum of micro-manufacturing and people bringing manufacturing facilities kind of into their own home, or people making an array of 6 or 7 3D printers and trying to bring that in. Do you see a role in 3D printing in large-scale manufacturing, whereas people will have, say, custom runs of things trying to bring down tooling costs? Do you think that's going to be in the realm of possibility, or is it there always going to be this place for tens of thousands per month and for parts?
So 3D printing, additive manufacturing definitely has its place in mass production, but I don't think it's ever going to be thought of in a practical sense as a replacement for injection molding or other more traditional types of manufacturing. One, I think we're a long way from getting a price point where that would work, but 3D manufacturing it can do things. You can do things with 3D manufacturing that you cannot do with traditional manufacturing, injection molding or even CNC. You can print geometries and in multiple materials to create products that have different flexibilities and strengths and applications that just can't be made any other way. I think I see A1 machines back here.
Type A machines, yeah.
So they're a great example. They have some great technology and some very smart people running that company. And they can print sole inserts for shoes that are more flexible in some areas and more rigid in others. And you just can't manufacture those any other way. So
yeah, it looks, we're just about out of time, and I think Eric, it looks like you had something to say here.
I think it's evolving the quality of the 3D print, like some of the special products definitely happening.
Okay.
I think in the long tail theory, if you think about something you can make a lot of them the same kind, the cost always will be lower. But there's a lot of opportunity which you don't need to make a lot of them the same kind. So think about those opportunities. If I will not see in the near future that every home will have a 3D printer, but maybe there's a community or school or office, maybe they have things that they can make it for a smaller amount, and that is the same mass production. But for the really mass production, I really need to see that opportunity will happen for whether we're very specialized product, and the 3D technology is so low that everybody can afford one. But if you think about it applying at your home, you really want to use it every day. Otherwise, you don't occupy that 1 foot by 1 foot space in your home. So think about that real estate. How are you going to utilizing it, and what is the yield out of it? So I think there's an opportunity, but not quite here yet.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope it's been good information for you guys.
Yeah.
Let's give our panelists a big round of applause.